Welcome to this explainer. We're diving into a pretty chilling collection of real-world horror stories today, brought to life through animation. We spend most of our days assuming we're perfectly secure, right? We lock our doors, we stick to the well-lit paths, and we tell ourselves that the monsters we fear, well, they're just figments of our imagination. But as the animated tales we're exploring today are going to prove, that illusion of safety, yeah, it's just that. An illusion.
So ask yourself, how safe are you right now? I mean, it's so easy to feel secure sitting in your own home or driving your own car. But the most terrifying threats out there, they aren't supernatural monsters. No, they're ordinary strangers walking the exact same streets we do. Okay, let's dive into this. Part 1, Watching from the Dark. The Stalkers and Observers. Picture this. It's the summer of 2019. Emily, a 22-year-old college student in Ohio, is completely alone in her apartment. It's midnight, it's dead quiet, she's just studying. Suddenly, out of the corner of her eye, a shadow moves deliberately past her bedroom window. Now, obviously, she assumes it's just a neighbor, but then it happens again. She pulls back the curtain, looks out, and sees nothing but an empty parking lot. She sits back down, right? Trying to shake off the paranoia, telling herself she's just imagining things. And then her phone buzzes. It's a text message from a completely unknown number. Just 3 words. Nice blue shirt. Just let that sink in for a second. Her blood absolutely ran cold. Because Emily was, in fact, wearing blue. She was sitting alone inside her locked apartment with the blinds completely drawn. Literally nobody should have known that. So, the crucial point here is she wasn't just imagining things. She immediately locks all the doors, calls a friend, and then, terrified, glances back at the window. And staring right back at her is a pale, expressionless face with unblinking eyes. She screams, and the man vanishes. The police arrive minutes later and, of course, find nothing. But the next morning, they find footprints. This stranger had been standing there for hours, just watching, waiting, and they never caught him. Now for Sarah, the nightmare escalated much slower. She works late shifts at a convenience store. One rainy evening, a man in a black hoodie and sunglasses walks in. He doesn't buy anything, he just walks the aisles slowly, just watching her. He eventually comes to the counter, places a bottle of water down, and leaves. But this wasn't a one-time thing. Weeks later, that exact same brand of water bottle ends up on her front porch. It took months for police to finally identify and arrest him as a serial stalker. But let's back up to that first night in the store for a second, because when he placed that water bottle on the counter, he smiled, and it was a smile that just felt entirely wrong to Sarah. Before he walked out the door, he whispered this incredibly chilling phrase, "I know where you live." And, well, he wasn't lying. That water bottle left on her porch weeks later, that proved he actually did know exactly where she lived. And attached to it was this horrifying note. 2 words, "See you soon." Thank goodness he was caught before anyone was actually harmed. But Sarah, she still checks over her shoulder every single time she walks home. Let's move on and see how this builds in part 2, Terrifying Midnight Encounters, Direct and Impossible Interactions. Sometimes our own reality completely betrays us. Take Jake, a trucker driving down a deserted Montana highway. He picks up a frightened, freezing woman in old clothes. She sits in his cab for 20 minutes, actually points out her house, and gets out. The very next morning, a diner waitress tells him a girl matching that exact description died in a fatal crash on that exact road back in 1987. Jake thinks it's a sick joke until he checks his dashcam footage. The passenger seat of his truck, it had been completely empty the entire time. It's a classic, chilling ghost story, right? Beautifully suited for a horror animation. But I want to ask you this. What if the stranger isn't on an isolated highway at all? What if they bring the terror straight to your front door? This brings us to Michael. He lives completely isolated in a remote Washington cabin.
We're talking snow covering the ground for miles in every direction. Suddenly, out of nowhere, he is jolted awake by 3 sharp knocks. Bang, bang, bang. He looks at the clock. It's exactly 3:07 a.m. He creeps over to the peephole. There is a woman standing outside in the freezing cold. She looks absolutely terrified, crying, shivering, and she makes this plea, "Please help me. I've been in an accident." Now, what's really interesting here, and what likely saved his life, are the details. Michael notices the woman has no winter coat. She's not even wearing shoes in the snow. And then suddenly, she completely stops shivering. As she looks at the door, she begins smiling this slow, completely unnatural smile. These terrifying inconsistencies made Michael's survival instincts kick right in. He backed away from the door immediately and called 911 instead. The 911 operator tells him to stay inside. When the police arrive just minutes later, the unnatural woman has vanished entirely. But here is the most disturbing part, the absolute punchline to this nightmare. They search the unbroken snow all around the cabin and find absolutely nothing. No footprints, no vehicle, nothing at all. It's an encounter Michael still has no explanation for to this day. Which brings us to part 3, the danger next door, the ultimate violation. When Daniel moved into his new apartment building, he met an older neighbor named Robert. And Robert always smiled. He was super friendly, always waving, always around to lend a helping hand. Just your picture-perfect neighbor. But then, Daniel started noticing a creeping pattern. Robert's friendly neighbor routine was actually a guise for obsessive monitoring. Somehow, Robert knew exactly when Daniel left for work. Then, he knew precisely when Daniel returned home. Eventually, it got to the point where he even knew exactly when Daniel was ordering food to the apartment. It all came to a heart-stopping climax one evening. Robert knocked on Daniel's door. He casually handed Daniel a stack of photos and simply said, "Forgot these." Daniel looked down in sheer horror. They were secret photos of Daniel himself, walking his dog, shopping, entering his apartment. And Robert? He just stood there, his smile never disappearing. Daniel contacted the police immediately, and what they uncovered in Robert's apartment was horrifying. This brilliantly illustrates the ultimate violation of privacy, because they didn't just find photos of Daniel, they found hundreds of secret photographs. Dozens of residents in the building had been targeted. Every single wall in Robert's apartment was completely covered in pictures, and he had notebooks filled to the brim with daily observations. He had literally spent years secretly documenting the entire building. Robert was arrested, but man, many residents moved away soon after, completely haunted by the fact that they had no idea how long they'd been watched. And that leads us to our final section. Part 4, Who is watching you? The final question. As these stories show, the real monsters aren't hiding under the bed or lurking out in the deep, dark woods. They're ordinary strangers, standing right in front of us. They bag our groceries, they drive on our roads, and sometimes they live right next door. So I want to end this explainer with a final provocative question for you. Which of these animated horror stories disturbed you the most? Was it the silent watcher at the window, the impossible hitchhiker, the stalker at the store, the unnatural knock at 3 a.m., or the friendly neighbor who knew far too much? Think about it and let that sit with you. Thanks for joining me today, and remember, sleep carefully tonight, because you never truly know who is watching.